Hi everyone, welcome to Libraries Transforming Communities Models for Change live stream with Cindy Fesemyer. Most of you will probably recognize Cindy, who is the director of the Columbus Public Library in Wisconsin, from the LTC Models for Change overview webinar. In the webinar, she discussed her library's popular Action Potlucks and other community engagement efforts. For those who may not be familiar with the Action Potlucks, they were a series of programs where Columbus residents could get together over shared food to brainstorm and execute small improvement projects in their town. This session is meant to be an open conversation to give everyone an opportunity to ask Cindy some questions about her library's community engagement work and about suggestions for getting started with the community engagement program at your library. Before we launch into things, a very brief introduction about how to engage with the stream. So there is about a 20-second delay. So if we seem to be a little bit behind what you're chatting in the box, that's because you are seeing a bit of a delay. Also, in order to talk to us and submit questions, you can do that in the live chat box, which I see some of you have already found. Depending on the browser that you're using, it is either on the right of the video or it's right below the video. Okay, and with that, I think we'll open it up for some questions, or if Cindy, I think you have a few things that you wanted to talk about before we get to that.
Sure. Yeah,
Great.
I can start with just, you heard Samantha say a little bit what the potlucks are about, but I'll give a little bit of background and just let you know what they've looked like for us so far. And then Samantha, just so you know, I had to close myself out of the YouTube link because I was hearing that 20-second delay as well. So I will
Okay.
be completely reliant on you for reading the chat to me.
Okay.
So anyway, hi, thanks for joining. I wanted to let you know that this Root for Columbus Action Potluck is just a program of our library in Columbus. It started when we were one of the early adopters of the Harwood practices through the Libraries Transforming Communities work that Samantha just mentioned. And for us, when we talked to people in our community, we heard from them that they wanted more reasons and more ways to get together socially with people who they didn't like drink beer, worship, go grocery shopping with, to kind of get out of their silos of the usual people that they saw. They wanted to diversify who they knew in their neighbors. So among other things, but that one was really easy for the library to just kind of grab onto and run with. And the thing that we came up with is this potluck program. It happens at this point 1 to 2 times per year. Our next one is coming up in May, and that's going to mark, gosh, I think that marks 2 years of doing these, which just amazes me. But the way that it works is we bring the people together. They commit to 2 hours. So it's, for example, from 6 to 8 p.m. On a weekday evening, that we're trying something new. We're trying a Sunday afternoon in a park with babysitters for kiddos, hoping to bring more like parent age people in for our next potluck. Anyway, people come together and they share food, and sharing food is a really powerful way to get to know the people that live in your community with you. I know some of you, maybe from bigger libraries, would have issues with not being able to do that, with not using commercial kitchens. We're in a small town and we're very DIY, so we don't worry about that at all. We just say, yeah, bring your cookies or your crock pot of chicken, and we're going to share food. We do that for about a half an hour. And then through a pretty structured hour and a half, the people are led through a big group brainstorm and then some small group work, with the small groups being on sort of themes of that brainstorm, where together in their small groups, they come up with one project that they can do between today, the day of the potluck, and the next potluck, which will be somewhere from 3 to 4, maybe 5 months down the road. And they're kind of seasonal. So the one that we are going to have in May is going to be setting up projects that we'll do throughout the summer together. So as a result of coming together and trying different facilitation styles, different kind of structures in leading the conversation, different people taking their turns at leadership, we've come out with a pretty wide array of these like bite-sized but meaningful for the community, just little projects that happened around town. So the very first one to kick it off was an art bench project with a little bit of extra money that the library had, go figure. We bought as many just blank, boring, like park benches as we could find, just blank wood. And then we partnered with 7 different local artists or groups, some school classes did it, gave them the empty bench and said, in 2 months, bring it to this summer kickoff event that we're having and let everybody see your bench. So that was it. We got a lot of like national pickup for doing that and have some beautiful park benches that are around town 3 seasons of the year. We put them away in the winter so they don't get too heavily damaged. But the one thing I'll say about that is I did also plunk down a little bit of extra money to just have these small, like maybe about that big brass plaques made that we put on the backs of the benches that say this is a Root for Columbus project, Root for Columbus project, a program of the Columbus Public Library, because it's important to name the effort so that people can join in if they want to, and also to give a little bit of cred to the library along the way. So some of the projects that have happened all out of the minds of citizens around town have included story walks. So if you're not familiar with those, it's just buying 2 copies of a storybook and breaking it up into component pages. And then for us, we do it in conjunction with our downtown businesses, and we put the storybook like maybe around 3 blocks of the downtown. You start in one business and we create a little map and you move around. A lot of places that do these story walks do them outside so that you're maybe walking along a nature path. For us, it was an effort to bring more kind of walking business downtown. That one stuck, and the library took that over, and we've done that probably 4 times in the last couple of years. We have kind of adopted a park as part of our projects. I think 2 to 3 of those time periods, the like kind of 4-month chunks of time, have been paying attention to a local park that's kind of the gateway to our town if you come in on the Amtrak train. We have done a social media scavenger hunt called Gnomes Away from Home. So these little gnome statues that move around town, and you get a clue every week or so when they move. Take a selfie, post it to the page, and maybe see some place new in Columbus you haven't been. And then events too. We did a sidewalk chalk contest about this time last year, and or I'm sorry, in May, and we're going to do it again this coming year. So some of the projects are so beloved, and people get so kind of attached to them that we keep doing them. So we'll do our 2nd annual sidewalk chalk art contest pretty soon. We have helped local downtown businesses clean up the back doors of their businesses in preparation for the street constructions that's happening in our community right now. So their front doors may be blocked off for a time when they replace sidewalks or something, and their customers can get around the back with help from the Root for Columbus crews. Over the holidays, we turned a big Christmas tree, fir tree that's on the library lawn into a giving tree. And so people could bring gifts of like personal goods that went to people and families in need, a lot of toiletries and stuff like that. Bring them into the library. We would give them a blank Christmas tree ornament and a Sharpie, and they write their name on the ornament. And pretty soon our Christmas tree out on the lawn was just full of all these ornaments with people's names on it. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of donations. It was really great. So it's all conceived of by the people who attend the potluck that day. They're the ones who carry it through, and then hopefully they come to the next one and talk about what worked and what didn't and help plan the next one. So that's in a nutshell how the program works. It's a kind of civic engagement program. It doesn't have to include food. We like to, because that's part of our culture. You can maybe figure out what works for your community. And at this point, are there any questions? Because I can't see them.
So I could start us off with a few that we got during your presentation on this and the overview webinar that we didn't have a chance to get to.
Perfect.
So one of those was, do you recommend getting local community partners for the potlucks? And if so, what kind of organizations or leaders in the community do you suggest approaching?
Sure. So that is the cool thing about a library, which is by design a municipal partner within your municipality. That's a cool thing about letting the library be the one to kind of engage this effort is that we have access to resources all around town as a city department, but also as a really engaged organization ourselves. We have people on staff who sit on Rotary and Kiwanis and the local literacy council and all different kinds of stuff. So we have the ability to connect people who have a need for their project with someone who can help. So in the case of let's say the park cleanup, we really had to work with the Department of Public Works, the ones who do kind of parks and recreation, you might call it. They supplied us flatbed trucks that we could move stuff with, these huge water barrel things so that after we planted things we could water, lots of tools, rototiller if we needed it. So without them, truly, we could not have pulled that off. We've worked with the recreation department. They have a whole bunch of volunteers too, and they kind of co-did that gnome scavenger hunt thing. We worked on that together using our volunteers from each of our organizations. So it really kind of depends on the project that's coming up. There may be a natural partner, and the library can just hook the people up with the right people. So like in the case of the chalk walk, the sidewalk chalk art contest that's coming up, there's a whole organization that does this May festival that we call Red Bud Days. A red bud is a beautiful tree, and there's a Columbus strain of it. So we are the Red Bud City. So it's a big spring festival for us. We just kind of dovetailed into their already existing celebration and added one more aspect to it. So of course, we just take the lead from them and go where they want us to go and start and finish when they want us to start and finish. But we're able to kind of initiate those initial partnerships, and usually they just go so well that we can keep repeating the projects if, and only if, people who show up in the next potluck want to do it again.
Great. So for the potlucks, do you recommend someone from the library facilitate them or that a community member facilitate them?
Sure. When we started them, we had someone from the library facilitate them, and it was me, because I'm a big mouth, but also a lot of people knew me already, and we used the power of personal connections to help get people to the first couple potlucks, because you're sort of taking a chance on a thing that you don't know what it is. So we just really pushed the folks that we knew to be there and bring their people along with them. So we gave them a friendly face in me, usually pretty friendly anyway. And I would say maybe every other time at this point, I or somebody else who's on staff at the library might be the one to facilitate just the big group brainstorm. But we've created a kind of a Root for Columbus Leadership Council, and they just take turns. And every time we plan a new potluck, we decide, okay, who's got it in them to greet people at the door, who's got it in them to facilitate this part of it, or do the basic welcome. We all just share so that a lot of different people are up at the front of the room at any given time. And honestly, it kind of runs itself. So after you do the initial big brainstorm, and after the brainstorm, which we actually do on themes, just to give people a starting place, because even 4 words are easier than a blank page. So we'll say, think on themes of like public art or families or outdoor spaces or whatever. And then people write on Post-it notes their ideas of something cool on that theme, stick it on the appropriate poster at the front of the room. Then we take a break, they go eat dessert, and that leadership council that I mentioned, we sort of theme out the Post-it notes and move them all over the place, report back when people are eating their dessert what the ideas were that came up, and then each of those, somewhere between 2 and 4 themes, we create a small group table and say, okay, so the people who are interested in environmental stuff, these are all the things that were presented. Go there if you want to do that. So people really do that on their own. And that was a long way of saying they end up facilitating themselves in those smaller group settings. But we modeled facilitation in the beginning, and now we share the load, and me and one, sometimes two other library staff participate in this every time, and sometimes we're the ones to take the lead, and sometimes we get to just sit in the back and eat more apple pie.
Nice. So Shauna has a question, and I
Okay.
think she's wondering how much is done by the library and how much is done by the community members in setting these up and organizing them.
Sure. So I just mentioned this kind of leadership council that we have, and that was basically created after maybe the second potluck, when we realized we didn't have it in us as a relatively small organization in a relatively small community. We didn't have it in us to carry these off by ourselves every time. So we needed help. So after the first couple of potlucks, we saw who was coming. We saw who was kind of getting into it. And each small group that plans their own project and then does it, they have to appoint a leader to that group, really just so that the folks at the library have one person to keep in touch with, to know, like, okay, if you need a pickup truck to move some stuff, we'll organize that. So it's really just for points of communication in providing the resources that they need. And I forgot why I was saying that at all. So what was the original question, Samantha? I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, so just if how much of organizing this is led by the
Right.
library and how much by the community members? Yeah,
Right. Yes, thank you.
no
So
problem.
eventually we knew who was like totally in it. They loved the idea, and we knew that we could say, hey, you know what? We want you to help us plan the next one. So won't you join us somewhere in the community, maybe at the library, maybe at somebody's business, to plan the next one? And won't you please take some kind of active part in it? And the active part can seriously be the person at the door who says, make a name tag and, give us your contact information. It doesn't have to be ta-da, public presentation kind of stuff. It can just be playing to your strengths. Maybe you just put spoons in all the serving dishes. It doesn't matter, but everybody plays a role of some sort. And that's by design also, because when we were doing the community conversations as part of our Harwood stuff, we also heard that Columbus suffered from not an overabundance of either formal or grassroots leadership. And so the potlucks are very much designed to help grow some leadership from the grassroots up. So take a chance and commit to being a leader of something for like the next 3 months, and maybe it'll stick, and maybe you'll end up on the leadership council, and then who knows, maybe you'll run for school board somewhere down the road because you know all these people now. So it is very, very much a shared effort between the library and a group of maybe 6 to 8 dedicated community members who help us put on each new potluck. But we plan it together. We set the agenda together. We decide on the method of planning together. We don't always do sticky notes and small groups. We did a straight up holiday one just to support a bunch of stuff that was happening in town around the winter holiday late in 2016, and kind of went into it knowing what we wanted to do and just structured that one differently. But in a way that the Leadership Council helped design, so they felt like they have some ownership over it. So I would recommend maybe know that you're like in it 110% for the first couple, but keep your eye out for those people who just love the process, get into it. Maybe they're a small group leader. You know that you can work with them, and then think about setting up a few people to help you plan maybe the third one down the road, and just start pulling people in that way. And eventually, our hope is that the library becomes more of a convener, the one who says, hey, come and do this thing at this time at this place, and then really just connects people to resources. But we're not there yet, and we're in a couple years already after, I don't know, 5, maybe 6 of these potlucks.
Great. Audrey would like to know what your biggest challenges were getting started and what you wish you'd known or done going in.
Sure. You know what? Getting started was a breeze. because people in the community know the library, and the library was trying this new thing, and there was free food involved. Um, so everybody was kind of curious and wanted to know, what is this thing? We had by far our best turnout that first day. There were, oh, I bet 50 people there, which is huge for us. We did it in a park shelter. It was pretty crowded and pretty noisy and chaotic in a great and lovely way. So getting started maybe wasn't for us an issue. Also, I'll just remind you, I had said that we purposefully invited people to know that we were going to have people there. So you can help predict your success by talking to your friends of the library or the story time grown-ups or whoever are your go-to people. Maybe it's other city department people. Whatever it is, just make sure that you get some dedicated people there from the get-go. The thing I wish that we had started right after that very first potluck was creating the leadership council. So I wish from the just like magic that was that first gathering of people, I wish that we had immediately started tapping people and saying, hey, come help us plan the next one. And just that much more quickly started making it a process that was designed by the people who live in town, not by the library necessarily. A challenge that we've had is, so we did this, let's say 5 times, and kind of hit a slump. For the last couple, we had a lot of the same faces, and we weren't bringing in more than maybe 20 people to do it, which is plenty of people to do 2 to 3 projects, no problem. But we weren't sort of increasing our community, and much of the point is to get to know different faces, and as people's time waxes and wanes, they could come in and out. Well, we were more losing people than bringing new ones in. So we had a kind of a group think, about a month back with the Leadership Council, and basically the question that I posed to the group was, do we keep doing this? And if we do we want to see a different result? And if we do, what does that look like? And if we want to keep doing it and don't want to see a different result and just know that it's kind of a smaller effort, that's okay too. But we needed to just kind of do a check and make sure we were seeing what we wanted to see happen in the community. And that's when we decided to tweak it. We tweaked our formula, which was 2 hours on a weekday evening after work. Now it's more than 2 hours, 2.5, 3, I don't know, but in a park, underneath a shelter, but with playgrounds on either side, on a Sunday afternoon in the springtime, with paid babysitters on both playgrounds and library staff helping keep kiddos entertained, while hopefully parents of little and school-age kids can participate in this. Those are the people we weren't getting on those weekday evenings after work. And of course we don't, because they want to like eat dinner with their family and read books to their kids and kind of have their family time after work. So we're trying right now, we haven't done it yet, we'll try it in May, to just tweak the formula and see if we can reach a different demographic. That's one that we'd be really, really excited to see turn out for the Root for Columbus stuff. And we're hoping that projects that can be carried out by people of all ages will be a result, so that people can plan on doing something that kids could help with that end result as well. So that's really good for the community. It's really good for the library because it's really awesome photo opportunities that we'll give to the local newspaper and put up on our Facebook. And so anything that makes us look good, I'm all about that too.
Nice. So going back to what you were saying about how you wish that you had started right off the bat from having the community steer the potlucks rather than the library deciding which way it goes. So do you recommend then having a leadership board to go forward with this project? And if so, how far in advance do you suggest getting that together?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And if somebody wants to do their kickoff civic engagement event, or whatever you want to call this, by having had a leadership board from the get-go, I'll say I would be really interested to hear how it went for you and kind of how you pulled people together and how you decided who to pull into it. So if you've got volunteers really who are naturally, your regulars or whatever that you think would be good for this, try it. And that's the big thing with this is you just try it. You don't have to be premeditated. So for ours, it was just like, let's do this thing. And we didn't know that it was going to turn into a series. We thought it was a one-shot deal, but people wanted to keep doing it. So you can just be responsive to what you hear from the people who show up either to help you plan it or show up to do it, and have it flow in the way that your community needs it to flow to make it like stick for them. If you want it to be a series of events instead of a one-off, you can also just try it as a one-off and see if it works, and do that with or without leadership. If your community, like my community, needs to have its leadership, so leadership at like the city hall level, like elected people, but also leadership in community organizations, PTGs, whatever, then maybe you want to involve those leaders sooner than later. So I didn't really answer your question because I think it depends on your community, but also you as the person who's trying to sort of kick this into gear. It depends upon what your energy's like. And if you can, like I did, just be like full steam ahead, we're doing this thing, and I could sustain that for a little while, then try it and see how it goes. If that's not you, then find some other organizations to partner with maybe, and then they'll bring naturally people to the event or the program as well. So if you want to try partnering with individuals or organizations, we have since had a number of people from faith communities approach us and wanting to participate in a leadership way. So if that's particular to my community, maybe your community is really big on, I don't know, community gardening, and they need something to do in the wintertime when it's snowing outside, if you're in Wisconsin like I am. Maybe that's an energy pool that you could tap at that time of year. So it really depends on your community. Sorry, I can't be more specific.
No, that's fine. That's great. I think it's very helpful. So Stephen is wondering if you would be able to discuss a little bit about what is talked about during your potlucks.
What do you mean, like the offline talk, Stephen? Like what people talk about when they're eating their dinner together? Or do you mean what the small group discussions sound like? Because I'll just say when they're eating dinner, I'm sure they're talking smack about me, but hopefully not. I'm assuming he wants to know more about what they do in their small groups, maybe?
Yeah, I'm assuming so.
Okay. So if he replies, let me know, Samantha.
Okay, I will.
But so the way it goes in the small groups is everybody who enters the door gets just an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that is the project planning guide, and it's blank. And so when you're in your small group, you have this kind of worksheet that'll talk you through, starting with the title of your project and who's involved and what their contact information is, and then working you through next steps. So to get this done between now and, let's say, September 30th, we need to meet 3 times to plan a thing, to do a thing, and to clean up a thing. We need to always do mornings because a lot of people work in the evenings. I don't know, whatever, but it's sort of the ingredient list. It's really just a worksheet, and it's something I'd be happy to share. I could send it if anyone wants to see that, or you can pop me an email and I'll send it to you. But we rely upon that project guide to help people walk themselves through the project. At the small group tables, we also have one volunteer from the Leadership Council at each one, and we call them wranglers, and they're really there to do 2 things. One, to make sure that people don't get really excited and put a lot of energy into a project that is too big. These are small projects. So when somebody says, hey, we should renovate the 150-year-old pavilion that would cost like $4 million, a wrangler would be like, that would be awesome. what if we started with something smaller, and try and get them back to something that actually will start and finish in that 3 to 4 month time frame. They're also there to kind of collect a resources list as people are talking. So if people need to partner with the schools, or they need to get plants donated for the park cleanup or whatever it is, the leadership then will kind of know what the ingredients are going to be after that potluck. And the library, as soon as it's over, can start working on hooking the right groups up with the right resources. The Wranglers also kind of end up being, for that group, a default community leader too, which is a really nice byproduct because that takes the library off the hook.
Nice. Yeah. Stephen just replied. He was wondering if there's a specific topic that brought people together in the first place.
Well, for us, I think what brought people together is we talked to hundreds of people about what their aspirations were for their community as part of our strategic planning using Harwood methodology. And we also created kind of a variation on a wish theme as our strategic planning information gathering process. So like a bare branch Charlie Brown Christmas tree we stuck in a Christmas tree holder, and then some blank like gift tags about that big on strings. We would put in this tree with a sign with one question that said, what do you want for your community? And that little tree, it was called the Root for Columbus tree. We just wanted a title for it. It moved around town for a couple months. Every couple weeks, it would go from a coffee shop to the hospital, to the library, to City Hall, wherever, bank lobbies. And we would just collect all these tags. And because we named it the Root for Columbus tree, people started coming into the library being like, what's up with Root for Columbus? And that really just kind of stuck. So we already had some buzz going into our first Action Potluck. And it was a Root for Columbus Action Potluck specifically to separate it from all this just kind of talking and opinion gathering we were doing. We wanted to signal to people that like the talking is over and now we're coming together to like plan stuff and do stuff together for our community, with our community. And we just had curiosity peaked kind of. And so folks showed up for that one because it was our first thing after asking people what they wanted for their community. They wanted to know what was going to happen. And this is one of quite a few things that happened in response to what we heard. So the buzz was there. So if you can come up with a reason to create a buzz, or create a reason for yourself. So in July of, well, 2 years ago, in the summer, we had a horrible, horrible summer storm come through that was very much like a tornado, only worse in some ways. And the town was shut down for, oh my gosh, 2 weeks, maybe. Like 200-year-old trees were down. It was just really bad in town. And I know you all have seen things happen in your communities. And the very next potluck that occurred after that storm, so toward the end of the summer, was all about recovering from the storm. So we asked questions on themes of how people could come together, not just in crises, and prompted people on a theme. We did sort of that holiday themed one. So you can do the same thing. If you have a carnival in your community once a year, have a potluck 3 months in advance of it, and maybe people can design sort of just adding more variety and quality to the offerings of that carnival, and doing that together with the library. So it's up to you to determine what your best opportunity is for your first time out. And maybe you don't introduce it as a series either, and just try it once and see if it works.
Great. Yeah, I think that's great advice. So Shauna is wondering if you could talk a little bit about the funding for the project.
I was wondering when we'd come around to that.
Yeah.
So here's the cool thing. When we kick off, whoever is like that day's welcomer and is just like, gives the basic background on what it's about and why we're here and what we're going to do and what we've done in the past. And it's just like the 5-minute spiel. They say, so the things that you come up with your neighbors today, they can't require money. And if they do require money, it can't be very much. And if it is something that requires a decent amount of money, you have to build in the way to fundraise for it or find donations for it. So originally, I had intended this program to cost the library $0. And then I reframed that for myself because it's a program and we have money in the library budget for programming. And I was the adult programming person. I'm happy to say we now have an adult programming person, so I don't have to be the director and adult programming. But I was in the position to just decide, you know what? We spend money on adult programming for other stuff. Maybe this will be our main expenditure for adult programming, and it is. So just like we could help buy sidewalk chalk for the art chalk thing, although we got some donated from the local kind of big box store too. If small amounts of funds are required, we can do that. We bought 2 gnomes for the gnome scavenger hunt. Not a problem to spend like $40, you know. If it's anything beyond $100 or $200, we asked people to fundraise. So the park cleanup, where they needed to purchase plants to put into a newly very sunny park because all of the trees had come down during the storm and it was this little shady pocket park. Well, now it's a really sunny one. So all the shade plants died and we had to plant all new stuff. So as part of another festival, the Root for Columbus small group that was working on the park cleanup, they had a fundraising booth and they had pictures of the park up and they talked about what their plan was and how important it was because it's right next to the Amtrak station, which is the gateway to our city for a lot of people. So they did a little bit of fundraising. We helped them with that. We helped them put together their displays and secured their, I don't know, tabling space at that event for them. But they staffed the table the whole day and made at least half of the money that was required. And then I got a little bit donated. Public Works donated a little bit, and then the library threw in some cash to pay for the rest. So we helped get it done, but we let people know from the beginning that it simply cannot be something that requires a lot of money. For example, one group wanted to build a brand new canoe and kayak launch on the river, and there's 2 reasons that we couldn't do that. One, it turned out DNR permitting was required, so simply cannot do that. That's more of a city council thing. The other thing is we don't have a source for donated lumber, and the library can't afford to buy all that lumber for a new thing. The cool thing is there was enough juice that we shared it around with civic groups, and now the Rotary is helping to build that canoe launch. So that's the other thing we can do, is just share the results of what citizens want. And maybe eventually, and this is like years later, maybe it'll get done.
That's awesome. So do you have time for maybe one more question from the webinar? And then if anyone, once the live stream catches up with us, if anyone has any last minute question?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So do your potlucks aim to engage diverse voices in the community that are often underrepresented or typically go unheard? And if so, how do you reach them?
Yeah. So that's a really hard question and one that I wish I had an awesome answer for. But the fact is, well, one, our community is not terribly diverse. It's rather rural Wisconsin, so just not diverse to begin with. But the diversity that is starting to show up, at least in the library, is that we're quickly becoming a bedroom community for Madison, Wisconsin, which is the capital and has a big university and a lot of employment opportunities. Columbus is just, depending upon where in Madison you work, like a half hour to 45 minutes away. So the demographics are changing. So the folks that we see show up for this stuff, I would say half of them are the usual faces who are overcommitted and do everything. They're the people who say yes, right? Do you want to join the Rotary? Do you want to join the choir? They're the joiners, and they really do help drive our efforts because, among other things, they know everybody in town. So they're great people to have involved in this. The people that we really want to bring out are more those bedroom community people. So it's the young families who like the time to engage with their community is really sparse, and anyone who has had a kiddo or two in your home living with you, you know it's hard to commit to stuff. And so those are the folks that now we want to start trying to involve in this, and that's the diversity we're wanting to reach for our next potluck. And so I don't know if it's going to work yet or not because we haven't done it. Um, so for us, it's not about a specific like cultural group or, you know, the students, or we don't have sort of a target that we're aiming for. We just want to see something beyond the usual same faces and kind of maybe young up the age a little bit, and get some people who are younger than me, hopefully there, and more energetic too. So maybe willing to take on a more physical project. Um, so yeah, so for us, if we wanted to engage our growing Spanish speaking population, um, we would probably do something different. We don't have interpreters at our fingertips. Even though I speak Spanish, I could not interpret for that. So we would need to do things differently. But that's just us. That's just our small, pretty homogenous community. I think for you, if you want to target specific communities where your branch or your library is located, you just need to find like the movers and shakers within that community and get them involved early. So ask to have a coffee with them and just say, I'm trying to do this thing. One, what do you think? Like, would the people who live in your neighborhood come to this? If yes, well, then can you help me get them there? So maybe that's where you partner early. It doesn't have to be a formal partnership. We have zero formal partnerships. We have no memorandums of understanding. We just ask somebody who we think we'd get along and could do some magic together. We just say, hey, you want to play together for a little while and see if it works. And if it does, we keep doing it. So we're really cash about it. Your library culture might be different. But when you're getting started, don't look for anything formal from the beginning. Keep it really casual and just see how it works, and watch partnerships emerge. Don't try and build them before you've kind of taken it for a test drive.
Great. And it looks like the questions have dried up in the chat. So any last notes before we let you go?
From me, no, I'll just say it started by asking our community what we wanted, and I would recommend you do the same thing in whatever way makes sense for you. And you get really good information that can help you be a really viable and visible organization in your community for hopefully many, many years to come.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Cindy, and for everyone on the live stream. We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us a bit more about what you've been doing.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.